Welcome everybody. Today's video shall be titled Rabbi Elijah Michael's Women's Rights and Rabbi T Singer's teachings are shockingly unfair. Praise be to God. Okay, so today's teachings will be going through quotes from the Torah and the Tanakh and the Talmud, which all interlink with one another, to show that women's rights in Rabbi T Singer's teachings are shockingly unfair. And from the evidence that I please ask you to write down and to check for yourself. For it's not my own teachings, it is teachings based upon the scriptures that you should search diligently. Praise be to God. Okay? The reason why I'm doing it, not to necessarily have a real go at the Rabbi T Singer, but is to show you, neither to criticize the Torah, but is to show you that the need for the new covenant. Rabbi Nachman of the Breslev and the Zohar says the light of God is so bright that God had to conceal himself in 10 separate levels. So the Torah is a lesser form of light whereby we could adapt to that brightness, and once we got used to it, then our eyes would adjust like someone does when they switch off the lights and switch on the lights, and then we would be able to be introduced to a higher form of light. And the teachings of women's rights inside of Rabbi Tov's teachings is a lesser light. But today we'll be looking at the greater light, going on to a higher level, which the Rabbi Nachman teaches that the Keter, which is the highest form of light, is hidden inside of the Mashiach. So today we'll be looking at Rabbi Tov's teachings concerning women's rights in the Torah, that light compared to the light of the Mashiach. Like Isaiah said, those who are sitting in darkness have seen a great light. So let's now look and compare the light of Rabbi Tov's teachings to the light of the teachings of Mashiach concerning women's rights. Okay, let's look at level 1, where what the Rabbi Singer and what the Torah teaches you concerning women's rights. If you turn in your Bibles to Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 13 to 19, Deuteronomy 22, 13 to 19, here you see that if a man is married to a woman and he doesn't take a liking to her, he can accuse her and say she was not a virgin. Okay? If he can prove it, then she is executed to death. Okay? If his allegation is found to be false, and remember, by accusing her, he knows it will sentence her to death. A good way of getting rid of your wife if you don't love her. If his accusation is proved to be false, all he gets is a slap on the wrist and a fine. And of course, then he is not allowed to divorce her for the rest of his life. Well, I'm sure that won't be very comforting to the woman, because now this man is allowed to have sexual intercourse with her for the rest of her life, and she cannot refuse that marriage, because in Deuteronomy 24, she's not allowed to divorce. So she is stuck with a man who wanted to sentence her to death, and she has no say. Extremely unbalanced. He could execute her to death, but she has no say and can't even divorce him. To me, that is a terrible injustice to the rights of women. Let's look on to the next case, which I said, Deuteronomy 24. A man can divorce a woman for, most reasons, okay? It doesn't have to be adultery. It could be many different reasons, which in the Talmud it states, even according to Hillel, if the cooking's bad, that he can divorce the wife. The woman has absolutely no rights of divorce at all. So there you see these two cases in the Torah. That's Rabbi T Singer's teachings is very, very unfair. Then you go on to Deuteronomy 23 verse 3, when you find if a woman makes a mistake and she has sexual intercourse with the wrong person, then the child can be called a mamzer. Almost like what in English is called a bastard, but maybe more derogatively, a mamzer. And these innocent children, they are labeled for not just their own lifetime, for the next 10 generations, which is maybe 300-400 years. It doesn't matter how much they love God, it doesn't matter how much they're sorry for their parents' sins. That label is on that children's children, up to 10 generations from the one mistake of the woman. No way of escape. No Yom Kippur, no sacrifice, no fasting will atone for that sin to remove the label from the children for 10 generations. Again, the rights of the women and the children here are not good. Who in their right mind would say these cases were good? And you have the Shulchan Aruch is, let me just see, sorry, someone's just rang the doorbell. Okay? And if you look at the Shulchan Aruch, this is called the Code of Jewish Law, okay, which is in most Orthodox homes, that you'll find in volume 4, 15, page 15, verse 8, that if a married woman verbally asks her husband that they could please make love, she is to be labeled an adulteress or whore and must be divorced. Going back into the rights of only males to divorce. So you see so far from the Torah and the Talmud, the Code of Jewish Law, that women's rights are very bad indeed. And going on to in the Torah, you have the daughters of Zelophehad. You find that in Numbers 27 and Numbers 36, where if a father dies and he has no daughters, then the inheritance could not be passed on to the daughters, okay, at all. That was a law that was amongst the Israelites. And the daughters of Zelophehad objected and complained. No man didn't complain for them. They did it themselves. And so Hashem heard, and Hashem changed it. Not one rabbi, not one Talmudic sage fought for the rights of women to change it. Women had to fight for it themselves. So much so that God closes the fourth book of the Torah, which is Numbers, which is actually the end of the Torah. Moses was just, the book of Deuteronomy was Moses just repeating what was in the law. So the Torah in effect ended in the book of Numbers with God fighting for women's rights. Not one man did it. And then to finish, you have Leviticus chapter 27, verses 1 to 8, when you see the valuation of people. And women, the valuation is half of that than man. Of course, which now Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 25 says, the laws and the decrees that I gave you were not good. Why? Because it's the lesser light. To adjust our eyes, once we get used to that lesser light, then we go on to the greater light, which the Mashiach, the Kitar, brings. And remembering, when God first made man, it says in Genesis 5, verse 1 and 2, God made male and female, and he called their name Adam. You see, the two shall be one. And of course, we see in the law that is very much opposite. They are not one. They are very much separated. They are not echad at all. So that's level one, okay? Praise be to God. Now, to prove these points, we're going to look at the kings in Israel, okay? And to see where the law affected it. You find the wisest man that ever lived was called Solomon. Now let's take a good look at Solomon's wisdom. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 28, Solomon says in his wisdom that he has searched all of Israel and he found one good man out of every 1,000. Okay, not bad statistic, but then he has not found one good woman. Very, very strange indeed. And of course it goes on that in Israel there could be no queen. So in the law there is no queen. Why could not anybody like the daughters of Olivad fight for there to be a queen? And in fact, if you look, there was one queen, but not in Israel. She was called Queen Esther. And it was Esther that saved the whole Jewish race. Not a king, not King David, not King Solomon. The Jewish people was going to be extinguished and exterminated by Haman, and it was Queen that saved them. Did the law and the rabbis learn to institute a queen in Israel? No, they did not, and there was no queen. And if you look through the whole of all the kings of Israel, you do not see anything in a relationship when it says the king was in love with his queen. There is nothing about the marriage, no good marriage that we have talked about any king, okay, that the women and them were in love with each other at all. The only thing we find in the kings where the voice of the woman is to be heard, we didn't hear anything about Solomon's women. Solomon's had 1,000 wives, and we didn't hear anything of the wife's voice. Hezekiah was married. Amen. Isaiah was married. Ezekiel was married. And we don't hear anything about the voice of any of these women. They don't seem to have a voice. But we do with King David. Only with Bathsheba, which to the end, she when David is on, he's getting old, and he's in the bed, being kept warm by the virgin, Abishag, that the wrong king has been chosen. So she comes and she fights that the son of David, Solomon, should become king. And of course, the other wife was Abigail, who stopped David from doing the wrong thing. So King David was the only king where the voice of the woman is heard. And why is that? Because the Mashiach, the greater light, shall come from the bloodline of David. He shall be called the Son of David. And because of that, it is only with David that the women have a voice. Outside of that, and remember, King David represents the coming of the Mashiach. Outside of that, none of the women in Israel had a voice. So you see, under the law, it is not looking good for Rabbi T Singer and for women's rights inside of the Bible. But if you go before the law with Abraham, you find Sarah and Abraham's marriage, a marriage of love, a marriage of unity, a marriage where Abraham has to listen to his wife, a marriage where you see Isaac and Rebecca comes in and she has a voice and she fights for her sons. So you get to see the ins and outs of those marriages. Jacob with his two wives and the personalities. We're invited into the home life and into these families. But when the law comes, women's voice is stum, except with David, which of course points to the Messianic era where women's rights will be established as it was in the beginning, which points as to what Jeremiah 31, verse 30 and 31 said, a new covenant shall come, not like the old. And in verse 21 of Isaiah 31, where it said, I shall establish a new thing on the earth, where I'll make a woman now to compass a man. A woman now's voice shall be heard, whereby in the law of Moses she was not. Jeremiah 31 verses 21. Praise be to God. Which takes us back to the fall of man, when man fell and the sinful nature was given to man, and things are not looking good. Death is now on the earth. God says, by the seed of the woman, it shall crush the serpent's head. The importance of the woman and her voice is returned back through the line of the Mashiach, the era of the Mashiach, where the greater light puts right all of these laws in the Torah, which is at a lesser light volume. So it's time that our eyes should be adjusted now. We've got used to the unjust laws, the laws that have not got enough light in them, and now we're ready to receive the greater light. So I hope you're ready to be introduced to the Kita, to the Mashiach's teaching of the greater light. So now we go on to level 3, where the prophets. Now you find the prophets help us understand the difference between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. The very first prophet in the Jewish Bible, the minor prophet, there's 3 major prophets, which is Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, and the 12 minor prophets, beginning with Hosea. Now Hosea comes in and talks a lot about the unfaithful wife. Hosea's unfaithful wife. Israel being the unfaithful wife. And that represents the journey of the Old Covenant. But when we come to the last prophet, which is the 12th minor prophet, which is Malachi, okay, he comes now, and remember, Malachi is the last prophet, now going to introduce the Messianic Era, the time of the coming of the Mashiach, which the book of Malachi introduced both the Mashiach and Elijah. So, but he doesn't talk about the unfaithful women. He talks about, in chapter 2, the unfaithful man. God is now going to redress the balance. A new covenant is coming in. A greater light, where women now are treated, the balance is restored. And so Malachi does not address the unfaithful women. He now addresses the unfaithful man, because the greater light for women is now coming in the Messianic Era. Now, so here comes the Messianic Era. Yeshua comes, and it begins with the virgin birth. So unbelievable that God could lift a woman up to so much honor that the Jews simply, and many unbelievers do not believe such a thing would be possible, that God would honor a woman in such a manner. And what a greater way to start this new covenant, whereby to introduce it, it begins with the impossible thing. And like God said in Jeremiah 31 verse 21, I will do a new thing. Isaiah 43 verse 19 and 48 verse 6. Something that's been hidden from you, that's never been done before. And then comes the virgin birth, where women now, amen, have compassed a man. And how now could you look down on a woman when God himself has given forth his only son through a woman? Now you can't treat women badly. You now have to redress the unfairness of the laws before. So what a greater way than to start that a virgin birth. And of course, if you go on it even to his death, at his birth it was a virgin, and his death you find only the women were at the cross. And then when he's resurrected, then it's the women that are there first. And it's the men who refuse in Luke chapter 24 to believe the woman. So we have this new covenant favors and is established, and every major event from his birth to his suffering on the cross and to his resurrection, it is women that are the vocal point at each stage. Why would God do that? He prophesied it in Jeremiah 31 verse 21. I am doing a new thing, that I will now turn the tables to make a woman come pass. Amen. It's all inside of the prophets. And then it then moves on. Jesus comes and he teaches that no longer can you divorce for any reason a woman anymore at all, in Matthew chapter 5. And then the teachings of Paul in 1 Corinthians 7, that sexual rights in a marriage are equal now between a man and a woman. Divorce rights, 1 Corinthians 7, they are now equal between a man and a woman. 1 Corinthians 11, it says that both the man is of the woman and the woman is of the man. Like you find in the Torah, in Numbers chapter 5, when a married man, feels jealous of his wife, he can take her to the temple where she's forced to drink water and dirt and to see whether she has been unfaithful. But if a woman in Numbers chapter 5 is jealous of her husband, she can do nothing about it. Amen. The shoe is always on the footstep of the man. But inside of the new teachings of Jesus in Matthew 5, Paul in 1 Corinthians 7, amen, all the rights in marriage are now equal. Praise be to God. And of course, then you find Jesus in John chapter 8, when the lawyers, the teachers of the law, the Pharisees, bring to Jesus a woman caught in the act of adultery. They are now asking him the judgment, and Jesus now turns around and said, he without sin cast the first stone. And he said, where are thine accusers? And they left. So what's teaching at the Mashiach, the greater light, is come, the teachings of the law, where women were accused, amen, mums or children, accused by a man if not being a virgin, accused if the man is jealousy. Jesus, the Yeshua, turned away the accusations and brought it completely equal. That was the greater light. But unfortunately, we're stuck all the way back to the daughters of Zelophehad, where men just would prefer the lesser light, where women's rights are down here and where men are in the driving seat of accusation, even if it's at the result of women being executed to death. Surely the greater light, which brings in the balance and puts all of that in bay, bringing man and woman, as God said in Genesis 5 verse 1 and 2, he said, God made them male and female and called them Adam. It is Adam that named Eve. God didn't. God called them Adam, making them equal. But because of the fall of man, we lost the glory of Eden, and the lesser light, which is the Torah, came in. To adjust our eyes from being cast out of the Garden of Eden, we were blind. We couldn't see. Okay? So God put the glasses of the law on us to adjust our eyes to a new environment. It should be adjusted now, and we're ready to receive the greater light, which only the Mashiach, Yeshua, did. And Muhammad came and swept the world and brought something that was even worse than the women's rights in the Torah. But both of them are a lesser light that our eyes should have adjusted to now and be prepared to receive the greater light, where women no longer are unfairly accused. Yeshua has pushed that away, giving us both equal rights. Hallelujah. You find in the Talmud, you have quotes with Mishlei 9 verse 2 and Vik Rabbah 13 verse 3, where it said, a new Torah shall come forth from him, that the teachings of the Mashiach will make the teachings that we have seem as meaningless. Why? Because it brings us back to the equality of the Garden of Eden. The curse that God put upon Eve because of the fall, he said, the man shall rule over you. And that's what the law does. It's inside of the curse of the fall of Adam and Eve. But the Mashiach, Isaiah 53 verse 6 says, and the Lord laid on him, the Mashiach, the iniquity of us all. The curse of Eve and Adam from the garden after the fall, where the woman shall be ruled by the man. Christ has soaked that up and has brought in the unity of love, where the accusations of the lesser light of the law can now be passed away, and the Kita, the greater light of the Mashiach, has now been introduced. But unfortunately, the Bible says that the deeds of man were evil and that they preferred the darkness than the light. Brothers, it said this in Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Come on, we've got to understand and recognize inside of us where darkness is. But the Spirit, according to Genesis Rabbah in the Talmud, the Spirit of the Mashiach, the greater light, moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And so today, choose the Mashiach's new covenant, where the greater light for women's rights have come in. Please don't choose the lesser light. Praise be to Hashem. Remember the Psalm said, I will lift mine eyes, lift your eyes up to the hills, from whence cometh my help for woman. And my help comes from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Don't be like the daughters of Zelophehad, where no man stood up for the rights of women. Now we have been given a new covenant where we as men, amen, can support the Mashiach's laws for women's rights, which totally outshine the laws of the Rabbi T Singer's teachings on women's rights. Praise be to God.